Hello, everyone. Welcome to the April 2024 CLF Boston Northeast Reuse Group meeting. As I was saying just a moment ago, we'll look at the agenda. Today's going to be a little bit of a lighter meeting. We don't have any kind of official presenters, but we do want to go through some small resources that members of the group had, and then talk about either regional or kind of big picture updates that we're seeing, and then kind of close it out with looking forward, and then if anyone has any discussion questions. So just quickly recapping the previous meetings, I copy pasted this from this morning. There was the CLF Boston Northeast All Hubs meeting, but just wanted to go through all of these meetings are on our YouTube channel. But in November, we talked to Chop Value. We did a recap earlier in December, looking at everything we did in 2023. January, looking at Pilots, really ambitious and I think pretty interesting circular inventory management software. February, we had the Mira Board strategic planning session. And then last month, we talked about the Build Reuse Conference, that recap. And then Goody Clancy went over a bit of how they're designing with and for reuse. So to get on with the presentations we do have today, we're looking at kind of promoting emerging resources. So part of the group and what we want to show and showcase to many of you and spread the knowledge is that a lot of these resources are either nascent or unknown, and that if we can share a lot of these, hopefully we can start taking those first steps, second steps into really in our own practice, pushing circularity. So I think first up, Laurel, this is you. Do you want me to go to it or do you want to share a screen?
I'll share my screen and then can you put the link to it in the chat also? Okay, so for context, this is an effort that I'm working on at Dyer Brown, and we are most often working on projects that are not LEED certified, and because of the very high volume of projects we do. So for reference, Dyer Brown's been around and operating in Boston for I think 55 years, and we are the on-call architect for 75 plus buildings in downtown Boston. So we do a lot of tenant improvement work, and we also do a lot of, common area upgrades, so elevator lobbies, restrooms, that sort of thing. So because of that, and obviously involvement in this group, I'm really interested in trying to, of course, divert as much waste as possible. And we have, we're pursuing wherever possible, like manufacturer take back programs and all of that. But the other piece that I'm kind of trying to do and what these specifications are focused on is really just capturing the data around what is the volume and amount of materials and of what types that are coming out of our projects. So everyone, you can feel free to kind of look back at this and jump in, and you should be able to comment. But to just go through it really quickly, and a handful of folks have already, you'll see, have added some comments here, but essentially what this is looking at is reducing the amount of waste that's going to landfill. That's the goal. And then requiring that it's documented essentially and submitted. So there isn't a requirement in here for meeting a certain diversion rate. I think that, for LEED, I know there's a need to meet 75%, I guess, minimum. And I think that this has raised some bigger questions, and I'd like to talk about this with the group. But ultimately, my hope from the specification document, or including the specification, is just requiring that the contractor submit a waste management plan, that they provide what the disposal plans are. And I think, so Connor had a question, and unfortunately he's not with us today, but about whether it was realistic to require that they provide like the tipping fees or the costs for sending material to landfill. I think that, I feel like we are kind of making the argument that you could save money by source separating and not sending a whole commingled load to landfill. So I don't know how we can provide, clear metrics or examples that that's the case if we aren't able to see what the cost is for the tipping fee at the landfill. So I don't know if this is a realistic requirement, but we'll put that out there to the group. And then they also, as a part of this, are required to provide a list of all the materials that are going to be salvaged, reused, or recycled, what the end use or end market will be for those, and the estimated cost savings or cost increase from recycling versus landfilling or disposal. So then essentially the contractor, and we're noting these are, and this is just following Massachusetts requirements, like these are the materials that you're required to recycle, and what is not allowed at landfill. And then we also note, we have a reference to the state waste ban, again, noting the materials that are included there. And then there's also a link here to this kind of guide for developing a waste management plan if the contractor isn't familiar with that. And then ultimately, we require that they submit the final waste management plan, and progress reports on that, along with pay applications, and a final report at the time of project closeout. So one other comment that isn't currently addressed in here is that I think somebody made a comment that I don't think I'm currently calling for them to also provide documentation of construction waste, like during the new construction. So clean gypsum wallboard or packaging, all of that. So I do want to add that back in, but ultimately, like, this is a baby step, again, just asking for disclosure and reporting. And this has been, floated to our principals. They're, open to including this as as a part of our standard spec. But their question was, is this going to be added cost to the client for the GC to, provide this documentation essentially? So with that posing that question, I guess I'm going to stop sharing, because I would love for people to like weigh in and kind of wordsmith the technical pieces here, but just in concept and what I've just described, I want to get everybody's feedback. And like, if you're at a design firm, are you requiring a waste management plan? Are you reviewing those for projects? If so, are you doing it for any projects that aren't lead projects? And I guess I also, Randy, sorry I muted you because you had background noise going on. I'm gonna unmute you, or I asked you to unmute. You have to unmute yourself. But maybe you could also weigh in on the question about, like, is it realistic to be asking for what the tipping fees would be?
Right. A couple things here. I'll go back to the additional cost as far as there should be no additional cost from a demo perspective to put a waste management plan together. It's a simple transfer from the estimate sheet to what goes there, and it's an easy fix. And as you get your receipts in, you manifest back from wherever it was recycled, repurposed, or disposed of. You just filling in checking the boxes. So that's not a heavy lift as far as that goes. And what was the other question?
I already forgot.
Well, you had the other note I had with the savings of the increase and decrease. I don't know if you really want to go there with that, because usually if one guy who's working real hard and finds 10 outlets, not that you want everybody to have the outlets, but if one guy gets an advantage because he's working harder on it, that's his edge on getting more of this work. I think the end thing knowing is this, as you know, we know what we've learned with carpet, and we're learning with all these new products. These can be done. It takes time. It's like riding a bike. The more you do it, the better you're going to be. And there shouldn't be cost increase. I'm seeing with that, so I don't see that. I don't know if I'd be asking for the savings or the increase. Obviously, the increase, the guy's going to be whining about it and tell you why it is. And generally in this business, it's about the money. So unless somebody, a developer, desperately wants it recycled and is willing to pay for the increase, then it would happen. But I think for us to really make this happen, we got to find all these resources so we can do it at least for the same cost. No difference. Just go in, get it done.
Agreed. Anybody else have any thoughts, questions, comment? I really would love to know from anybody who's on the like design side, what, if anything, and if you have to go back and like look at your specs and get back to me, please do. But yeah, I'd love to know like what people are including. I sent this around to a bunch of the SDL network in Boston just to ask, and people gave me feedback, but nobody told me if they were using something similar. I want to kind of like workshop through this with everybody and make sure that it like feels really good, and then I think we would be like willing to kind of release this and maybe include the spec language as a resource when we update the reuse roadmap, so that way everybody could adopt it, because my take is, frankly, if every firm in Boston had exactly the same language in their specs, then it would just push us closer to what Randy's talking about, where this is just regular practice and everybody's doing it for the same cost. So yeah, I think this is what I'm hearing, Frank, is that when people are, and certainly what I've heard from GCs is that the only time they have experience with doing a waste management plan or have been asked for it is when it's a lead project. So
Right, and I think the key would be here too, back to the waste management plan, and I think the big thing that will really stick up, because the real guy in charge here is the developer and the owner, and pushing the whole issue with the ESG, and we figure out a way that the carbon footprint of all this stuff is in the calculation, and then where they have to take the ownership with the whole ESG, where we don't have to talk about lead, but more about the carbon footprints and the points. And I think that's going to be the key to really making this thing take off.
yeah, and I think that if we like, if I'm receiving a waste management plan, that I can then take that information, and when I get the final, I can take that information and at a minimum go to like the greenhouse gas equivalencies calculator and say, okay, this is the amount of material of this different material stream that was recycled, which is equivalent to this many cars driven or this many trees planted, that kind of thing, because I feel like um that can then go into kind of the project report and information back to the client. So, but without having those numbers, it's hard to tell that story, like you said. That's definitely all right. Well, please feel free, folks, to like jump in on that and weigh in, and I'd love to hear offline or separately if you can share more about like your firm requirements or other projects where you have experience with that. I would really appreciate it. And otherwise, I actually have to drop off early today, so I'm sorry to miss the latter half of the discussion, but um, thank you all for joining. Good to see everyone.
I would say towards the costs, while some contractors might assume there wouldn't be any change, I last year and again this year reached out to a couple of processors, and I can quickly share my screen and show. If you're asking for it on the contractor, he will give it to you. And where is the share screen? Um, this is just something I got from Resource, listing out exactly what that we're going to find as we go to them. And as you can see, I might zoom in a little bit. So for mixed C&D, every load that goes commingled, at least in 2023, that's pulled up, is going to be that 165 a ton. But as you go down and start separating and going out of your way to do that, at least Rock, which RCI certified and is one of the few processes in the region I'm going to trust, is showing and detailing that they will lower tipping fees for these site separated flows. So it's definitely something that can be done. It's just have the contractors have been read and understood to a point where you can pre-plan for this. You're not doing it at the moment, and not something like in the kickoff meeting, and suddenly the designer is asking us, "Hey, what is your plan for this?" So I think with and that's what contractors are doing, but with proper pre-planning and proper design and owner follow-up, I think there is room to run with all of these, especially on the cost savings of something like a site separated.
Can you share that, Michael, or is that just like, was that just sent to you specifically?
I'll ask, but I do know of other contractors who I've told about this getting similar letters just from asking.
Uh-huh.
I'll ask today, and if I can, I'll share it with the resources.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. All right. I'm gonna drop. Thank you all.
Next, Payette had asked, they wanted to share their salvage and reuse listing resource. I see at least one or two people from Payette on. You can share a screen, or I have it up here if you'd like, but I'd love for you to speak to it if possible.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Michael, for sharing the screen. Um, so this resource kind of started from one of our LBC projects, which kind of required us to salvage at least 30 products from 10 different CSI categories. That's why we tried to sort out like different CSI categories, product categories, and where we can actually reuse them, because when it comes to reusing reclaimed products, you can't just hide them somewhere else. LBC kind of requires you to showcase where you want to put your reclaimed and salvaged materials. So we try to create this list with product specific distinction, which kind of shows like where you can actually buy these at a larger scale for commercial projects. And we thought it would be great to like maybe share it with others, and maybe you can also benefit from this list and add to it if you find something cool. There is another tab which has like an overall like resource center, salvage products, which I think is very similar to what you can find on like the all reuse ecosystem map. But yeah, Mickey, do you want to add anything to this?
Yeah, so we had kind of like launched into this sort of research exercise for materials pedal project. So yeah, and I'll share the link for the ecosystem map. Michael, I think folks who generated that report will be familiar with this. This is where we had kind of come across it, but there's a spatial directory. See if I can just put this in the chat real quick. That's a bit more national as well as local, but we saw that some of these are. I'll go ahead and share my screen too, so we can at least internalize it for everybody's memory here. You guys seeing a map of the United States? Great. Yeah, so if you go to this link, it looks like it's going to be a little bit difficult for me to pan while I'm sharing. But yeah, so if you go to zoom into New England area, we can hover and find some of these sources. So what we're trying to aggregate that based on product category. So if others on the call, and I imagine this resource may be fairly difficult to update, so we want something that was a little bit easier and straightforward to just begin to work through products, and then go out and start asking our owner and the contractor on the job like what they might be able to find. So maybe a pretty simple resource, and just looking for everybody here to contribute.
Yeah, no, I would say thank you to Payette. It's resources like this that we're looking to kind of develop. I know that Abby, through kind of Recycling Works, there's similar resources. Maybe there's kind of opportunities for collaboration and kind of building something out. But as I mentioned earlier, a lot of times it's the ignorance of, oh, I didn't know this resource existed, and then maybe one team will find that it exists, but they're not going to share it with the other team just because it's on some sort of Excel sheet and not kind of easily known or shared. So we'll look to not only send this out, but through the new CLF Boston website, hopefully we can kind of have a resource page there. We're looking to really build out in the next month or two, and kind of have these almost be living documents. And if anyone else has any other kind of regional tools, regional resources, or companies that are looking to add to this, please let us know. Let Payet know. We'll try to build this out to be as useful as possible.
I was just going to add, I think one wonderful here at seeing all this, I have a feeling I know what project it is too, that I had worked on it at the front end. So I think that's the same project with Payet, whereas like an interior renovation labs. And so I think there's also another resource that can take lab equipment. So I was hunting up that and I can send that over. I'm not sure who to send that to. Because that also can be quite intensive. So my question, sorry, you can tell I'm flaking here. Were you finding when you were putting the list together and then actually, trying to have materials be collected for reuse, were there certain categories that were easier or harder than others, just from your experience?
Yeah.
Yes.
No, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I think I can feel this one. Yeah, so I mean, we're still very much in that process right now. And one of the strategies that we've had is actually just to assign responsibility. So like the LBC has a threshold and it says we have to hit 30. Okay, like if we target 30, we're never going to get there. So let's say 40 or more. And then, have a conversation about it. So we gave the owner a certain number of tasks and products to go out and research. We've got the contractor working, we've got our consultants working, and then ourselves. Like, so everybody's doing the research, bringing it back. I think we're gonna have a meeting in the next couple weeks, whatever that is. We're in DD on the project, so it's like kind of the time where we're developing the specs, and it seems like the right time of the project to be having the conversation and to be doing the research and to find out what those are. I mean, some of those will have cost impact, some of them may be cost deducts, some of those will be, require extra storage or awareness during the move out from one of their prior spaces. So it's definitely a multi-headed beast to try to grab and get everything together in time, especially if for the labs, right? Or for this particular client who has like a very high polish type of aesthetic. So they are like, I would say, like less open to a collection of old doors or something like along a corridor, or, so they're going to want to maintain their quality standards and to be able to achieve that with the same cost and schedule and everything that they're already working with.
I'm going to take it back. Now I'm not so sure it's the same project. It's just based on the schedule, not on the level of aesthetics, based on the schedule and stuff. Can you talk just a little bit on how useful you found, like LBC requires you to do an inventory of your existing structure and materials. Does that help you kind of figure out what to target or not?
Yeah, it does, and it's also sort of challenging. So this particular project is the headquarters is a consolidation of multiple facilities, but they may not all terminate by the time that they're going to be moving into the new facility. So there's some schedule conflict there, or it's not a one-to-one. It's not an existing. This particular project is not an existing building, so there's not like we're taking stuff out, we're storing it carefully, and then we're moving back in, and we're quantifying what we're achieving from the savings from a previous building. So we're very much in looking to the community or to maybe some of those things that ebb and flow on a move out. So
okay.
Yeah,
maybe I can add a little bit on the inventory stuff that was done on another project of ours, which also required LBC on an existing building retrofit. For that, we did create an entire list of an Excel inventory of what all can be reused. But then we did find some challenges while we were storing out some materials because there were some kind of moisture issues while storing some of them, or some of them had to be stored in a particular order, or like for example, we had roller shades, but then they were not numbered the exact way that we wanted it to be. So we couldn't figure out like which roller shade went with which windows. So creating, like, it was like more of a lessons learned on that project for us, like what we can do next time when we have to like thinking of reusing some of these. And yeah, definitely aesthetics was another issue. Like we were thinking of like maybe salvaging a lot of those doors, but the client was not convinced with it. So yeah, like even after the inventory, like there were a lot of pushbacks on like what can be actually salvaged, but we did like reuse a lot of reused access floor eventually in the project, and some of the marker boards, like it was very limited, but since it was an existing buildings retrofit, we could like get still reduce a lot of carbon emissions, but not as much as we anticipated in the beginning.
Yeah, that's great to hear though.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anything else, Payet, to talk about before moving on? Perfect. Well, once again, really appreciate you all sharing that. Hopefully we can continue to build on. I saw that in the chat. Abby wanted to connect a little bit further to make sure that obviously we're not siloing any of these activities and we can kind of all put them together. I also, so this slide we sent out with links, but also wanted to once again just include the Build Reuse Wiki link. It's been a really great resource for a lot of different items, including kind of policy development, the Math DP deconstruction groups looking at a lot of the different documents there. But if for some reason you can't find a lot of either resources, I would always say take a look at this wiki. I can open it real quick. And it has quite a lot of different items, whether you're looking at kind of the design tools that are up there from AirUp. There are some case studies in here as well. They can be a bit regional guides and different maps and databases. So make sure to kind of keep that bookmarked if you do have a lot of questions about this.
Hi, this is Luna Oiwa. I'm part of the Builders Board, and I actually spearheaded the development of the wiki. So thank you so much for promoting this resource.
Sure. No, it's been really, really useful to, like I said, if there's something that's really bugging me on policy or if I do need a case study, I've looked at this several times. So but I think we've shared it before, but we'll continue to share it. Please, everyone in the group, feel free to use it.
Glad to hear it's useful.
So moving on, I just wanted to get into some kind of regional updates. So there has been a lot of actually back and forth discussion. Now, I don't see Mike Elliott here for the Mass DEP. I do see Kathy, but there has been a bit of a back and forth as of late with a lot of contractors in the area about the numbers we're seeing come from processors that we are being told versus what is being reported out. So just to be a little bit anecdotal, about a week and a half ago, I reached out to a processor for a lead job and had said, hey, can I have your diversion rate? They had sent me a letter, and I won't call them out by name, that claimed in the region they were diverting 85+% of commingled loads that came in. Now, when asked for backup other than just a simple paper sheet, they could not provide it. They said, no, this is just what we send contractors. And then in looking at the Math DP's recent 2023 processor breakdown, it was very clear that none of that was really verifiable. And this is a problem that we have been seeing for a while. Earlier, we mentioned in the construction waste management discussion that lead v4 and 4.1 had set that 75%. And it seems that a lot of projects got used to seeing 75% and just moving on with it. But what we are very quickly finding and reinforcing is that a lot of those numbers are hard to actually verify and see. So with that, I actually wanted to show, so one of these bullets from SDP. Now, what you're seeing here is the processor, if they're compliant with the process separation rate that the Mass DEP puts out. This is for 2023 data. And while some of them are very compliant, and once again, the process separation rate isn't just C&D waste, but some of these processors are acting only as C&D waste processors. while some are compliant, you're seeing a lot of these much lower than anything we'd like for a lot of our projects. And then if you go down, you can see those who are not compliant. And oftentimes this list dwarfs those that are compliant. So just wanted to spread to the group once again that what we are currently doing and currently perpetuating is not really working. Now there's a lot of different policy levers that we can pull that can be pulled by government agencies and policy direction, but just wanted to make the case, especially from the contractor side, that perhaps different methodologies will be needed going forward to actually start hitting some of these diversion rates we want to see, some of these goals that owners and hopefully design firms soon have for their own projects. Because like I said, right now, it doesn't look like we can very easily hit it or verify if we are told that we are hitting it. And then lastly, I just wanted to bring up that there is movement with different processors. So currently the only RCI facility in the region is Resource Roxbury. They believe have a verified 54% through RCI diversion rate for C&D waste. So while not great, they are third-party certified. And recently they purchased Northeast Recycling, which is a hauler in the area. At the Master Cycle Conference a couple of weeks ago, they went through and said that they now, because of their relationship with Resource, have the ability to, quote, skip the line. If there are any other contractors or owners who have recently had some woes with sending their loads to RCI facilities, Resource Roxbury has had upwards of a 4-hour line most every single day that they are in operation, and oftentimes are cutting off different haulers who are trying to take C&D commingled loads to them. So with that, a little bit of consolidation, if you want to work with Northeast Recycling and need a third-party verified facility, whether it's a project requirement, an owner requirement, there is some movement in the market there. That kind of nicely folds into the discussion about LEED v5. So for those of you not in the know, LEED v5 recently announced for more than just O&M. So this is for BD&C, new buildings, interior design, and construction, that they have a completely new for LEED v5 system, where they're really looking to try to crank up the market movement and really adding in that this is going to be a sustainably built or green building project. So with that, there are several credits that I wanted to share with the group that are very much around circularity. This planning for zero waste operations is a prerequisite over here. So really with, and this is IDC just because it's what I work in with most, but this is also in BD&C if that's what you're more familiar with for LEED projects. But really just wanted to share that some of these credits are starting to have very pointed language of understanding that we need to do better, we can do better, and this is how exactly that LEED v5 wants projects to be better. Also wanted to bring up construction and waste management, just because I had mentioned it just before. So with this new credit, they're looking to actually specify that if you're going to site separate materials, and if you want more points, there are certain targeted materials that need to be hit. So if you're looking to get any more than 1 point in this credit, which most projects would want to do, you have to site separate go out of your way, either 5 unique materials or these very, very high impact materials here. You'll notice that at least 2 or 3 of them are already waste span materials anyways. So maybe potentially easier in Massachusetts if you're going out of your way to actually site separate it. But another thing I wanted to bring up for any more than 1 point is that you have to use a third-party verified commingled recycling facility. As mentioned earlier, there is one in Massachusetts that is Resource Roxbury. So I don't believe there's any processors on the call, but what I would say is going forward, contractors, haulers, even designers, when LEED v5 comes down, which it'll probably be announced moving from pilot to actuality at Greenville this year in November. And I imagine the first LEED V5 projects for the cutting edge will want to start going on early 2025. This signals an extremely big market shift in if you want to actually achieve some of these items, you have to prove better. You have to prove that this is a third-party facility. You'll notice that for one point, it only mentions 35, being a bit more realistic with what's actually possible. But if you want to go way above and beyond, and I have verified that, you will see that both of these are identical. There's another and that is required here. It's a bit of a typo, but if you want all 3 points, you have to make sure that 50% is diverted. You're using a third-party facility, and you're going out of your way to site separate at least 5 unique materials or the targeted materials. So wanted to share with the group that this signals a pretty big market shift, especially given the slide before, that better waste practices are going to, if you want to hit these credit points, if you want to actually be better at waste, this is how LEED is asking you to do it. And in my opinion, it seems to be a pretty good idea. And then with the materials credits, previously there has been some credit criteria given to reuse and circularity. With this new optimizing building products, you'll see this at first very confusing matrix. In it says that different material certifications essentially have credit weight, and the more robust the certification, the more credit points that are given. And you'll see through all of this a lot of similar what you might be used to if you're a practitioner who's working on LEED. But also down here, a true zero waste manufacturer, getting materials that have high recycled content or come from a reuse source. So there is movement on materials credits. With 4 and 4.1, when they were introduced, it made some significant movement in how many manufacturers were looking to actually implement some of these certifications. And this goes above and beyond even that. And then lastly, for the designers here, there is a credit for 4 possible points for reusing interiors and reducing embodied carbon. This not only asks to reuse a lot of whether it's the interior or the non-structural elements, but also assigning a carbon value to it and looking to really see how much impact you are having and looking to prove that. I've sent the links to all of these in the slide deck. I can send them out as well. But just know that coming down the line, LEED V5 is looking to push a lot of things, and circularity is definitely one that they have not missed on. Before I move on, any comments, any questions on LEED V5 or what I've presented? Super.
Michael, can I ask a kind of in the weeds question about what it's like to review the data from haulers? I guess I'm asking if I can ask a question. I'm just going to ask it anyways. But when you are working on a project and you receive your tonnage report or, you know, whatever the final product is that the hauler provides, do you get like detailed information on how, like what loads maybe were dedicated loads of materials, as well as like what was mixed? Like what does it look like exactly?
Yeah, so actually I'll pull up a typical real quick.
I'm just curious because if you have a dedicated load of wood,
Mm-hmm.
the recycling rate for that load is 100%, correct? Or are we going off of like what the facility itself is going to ultimately do with that wood?
From what I have seen, and if anyone else has any experience, please chime in, is that when you send out a dedicated load, it'll say 100%, because oftentimes it's not taken to the same processor. So the hauler will, and I can get real.
Did not mean to derail, but I feel like this is kind of an ambiguous thing that I don't know too much about.
So what I typically get, and this is probably fairly typical for most contractors, is that you'll have a breakdown of all the hauls that you get. Now that can look kind of quite different from this at times. But they'll list what the date was. They'll have the ticket number, whether it was a commingled load, and then where it went. And then from there, they'll give an average diversion rate. So you'll see here that, can I make this bigger? So for this first line, I sent out a source separate load from one of my sites that happened to be paper and cardboard. So it was taken right by a baler and recycler, so we can claim 100% if need be. If either lead or the client is pushing on that, I can go out of my way to reach out to that and say, hey, listen, can I get confirmation for that? It gets a little trickier if I'm sending out a commingled load that isn't to a third-party verified processor. And when I do that, I have instructed the hauler that we're using through Structure Tone to really report out on the Mass DEP's most recent year process separation rate. Now, that's a very conservative estimate, but given what I said earlier, and if any of you have had a similar experience, there's no way to verify or trust a lot of the documents that are being sent out by the processor. So in using this, it's essentially the most honest I can be, or we can be. But looking down on this, more than that, the gypsum loads that I'm sending out to the recycler, also claiming 100% because it's not going to currently a C&D waste processor. And then like scrap metals going to just the recycler Matuccio over in Everett kind of thing. So really looking to only claim 100 when you can. Now this isn't going to be every contractor's construction, what they're claiming, but this is what I believe is the most kind of honest, transparent, and if I am audited, which more and more owners are starting to do. Last year I did 2 major product waste audits. This is defendable in that case. Kathy.
Hi, sorry I was late for the meeting. Lots of overlapping meetings today. This is incredibly interesting. And I will check out the recording. I'm looking at this, what you have shared, Michael, and wondering about weight slips. I know that from our perspective at Mass DEP, so not from what Mike Elliott does in terms of construction and demolition waste, but municipal programs that my staff works on, we can sometimes request and certainly suggest that municipalities request weight slips that go behind reports like this. So there's actual verification of what went over scale with a tear weight, a truck number, and all that good stuff. I don't know if you ever get that into the weeds for verification.
Yeah, so if you look right here, all this total tonnage, if I need to, I can reach out to right here, I can reach out to the hauler, and with the invoices sent to the contractor, oftentimes it's here's the slip. Not only that it was picked up this day, but this was the tear weight, that's everything. So the system is very used to receiving those. So it should be as simple as just asking for it, because those are always kind of sent as proof of payment. So a municipality asking for them would not go above and beyond the typical because they're being generated anyways.
Right. Sometimes what I see municipalities get is just sort of like a spreadsheet, but they may not always get that backup with it. And that's what I just wanted to put out there. Thanks. Glad you get it.
Any other questions before moving on? So lastly, just wanted to bring up some items that we're looking forward to. So tomorrow, there's through Carbon Issue Forum National, they're having an embodied carbon policy webinar based on a report that was sent out a couple of weeks ago. It's tomorrow at 2 p.m. talking about several different policies, including policies in the Northeast looking at reuse and deconstruction. Please feel free to take a look. I'll look to send out the link as well there. For May, I believe we are not going to be hosting this meeting, but instead being part of the Decon Hackathon. For those of you who have attended before, it's usually in May or April each year. Barbara Bachelom out of the Sustainable Buildings Institute, I believe that's what it's called, is hosting it, and that would be at times a little design heavy, but the hope for that is to work with other practitioners to really hack and work through what assemblies look like, what do drawings look like, what do specs need to look like in order to push this forward and really push deconstruction forward. So the past 2 years have been great, and we'll look to kind of have it again this year. With the recap, we'll hopefully send out the link to register for that. The last two items, so in June, the CLF Boston Northeast Hub is hosting the Northeast Embodied Carbon Summit. So that'll be June the 20th and 21st. It'll be essentially a 5-year update if anyone went to the 2019 Embodied Carbon in Buildings Summit at MIT. It's what really got me, frankly, into kind of embodied carbon and circularity. So looking to have a 2-day, the first day looking at kind of where we are, where we can be, and where we're going. And then the second day hosting workshops at the, this will all be at the Fed in Boston. So I have a save the date link here if anyone wants to take a look at it. And then on the 21st, one of the workshops will be circularity and reuse, where Laurel and I will be essentially facilitating as many people who want to come and working through here's where we are right now, giving some updates. We're looking to have both the construction waste specs done by then, as well as some other resources to share. But really kind of bringing a lot of key stakeholders and players together, giving them a framework of what is possible right now, and then asking all of, if any of you attend or them, what can we do better in groups of both designers, contractors, reuse vendors, and policy officials as well, hoping to get the city of Boston and other municipalities nearby involved. So if that's something that's interested to you, please check it out. The Save the Date is live now, and I believe as of this morning's CLF Boston Greater meeting, that Monday or Tuesday next week, the registration will be up for it. And then lastly, Laurel and I are still kind of working through the reuse roadmap version 2. So right now we've kind of stripped down the first reuse roadmap and are building out the new skeleton of really what we want to add. We'd ask if anyone is interested in helping or being a part of that. We'd love that. There's a bit of research that goes on, a bit of reaching out to different groups and finding a lot of those resources that we've mentioned several times. This version 2, we're hoping to have a resource page similar to what we're going to have on the CLF Boston page. So if anyone wants to help out, please reach out to us. We'd love to help, whether it's just proofreading or helping writing it. Any help we can get would be great. And with that, that is all of the official that I have. It's kind of open if anyone wants to kind of bring anything up. Any questions anyone has, feel free while I read through the chat.
What, Michael, you mentioned the MIT event. What was that one?
In 2019, MIT hosted the Embodied Carbon in Buildings Summit. This was when CLF National was really kind of breaking out of just being part of Washington University and kind of almost having a roadshow. So this event in June is essentially a 5-year kind of commemoration and next steps from that.
Gotcha. Wonderful.
Well, Michael, as you go through the chat, don't be confused if you see Melissa Wenzel communicating with Melissa Wenzel. Forwarded the invite to this meeting to Jory, who actually had a specific question. She's from Urban Machine about the Boston area. She's looking to team up with a like a transfer station or a end-use facility, C&D recycling facility, to try to capture wood and reharvest it, reuse it. So anyway, sorry for any confusion. I still work for the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. I do not work for Urban Machine. So sorry about that. I just wanted to let folks know that Minnesota this morning launched a $2 million grant opportunity just dedicated to the sustainable built environment. So Kathy and others have been letting me know what's going on in Massachusetts for grant opportunities. And so I'm finally happy to share almost 2 years in the making this opportunity. And then finally, I do want to give a shout out to the Builder Use Wiki as well as to Luna directly for all the work that she's done in it. Luna, I actually do have a list of about 5 organizations or resources that I need to upload, and hope to do that tomorrow or Tuesday. I know I'm not from Minnesota, but I had to share all that. Thanks. Or I'm not from Massachusetts.
I will say, adding on to that, in discussions with last year resource waste that I had mentioned, but also in the Mass DP's C&D subcommittee meetings that are held, I believe, quarterly. 1 or 2 meetings ago, there was different kind of markets. One of them was gypsum, one of them was wood, and the other was asphalt and shingles. When talking about the wood, it was made very clear. So Tafisa up in Canada is what takes a lot of the separated wood that's coming out of the New England area, and they were essentially begging for better wood. They said we can only do so much with the quality of wood that we're typically getting, and I have horror stories of just so many commingled loads going out that have maybe half of all wood that could most likely be reclaimed, but just aren't kind of taken that mindful care of. And it's very clear that the back end users want better, and the front end users think we can do better, but there's some sort of kind of disconnect in the middle. So I imagine if our room machine wants to, there are many a processor who are feeling the pinch of better requirements who would be willing to kind of ask for help or collaboration.
I think that's great, and I absolutely agree. And I don't know that the status quo, bringing in a machine to clean up the wood, is instantly the answer. What I think needs to happen, and what's happening here in Minnesota when local government are starting their reuse centers, typically at C&D facilities, is that once you put out the word that you want good quality film and blank material, people will treat it better. And we're getting a lot of contractors, even in our very, very rural parts of Minnesota, starting to realize, oh, I can unload my reusable leftovers or extras, or even for demolition projects, you can demolish a lot more carefully, knowing that stuff's not going to go to the landfill. You can start to set up this norm of better quality. And the source separation has a lot to do with it, which we actually have a focus study just about to start for one construction project, source separation, and every BMP to reduce the amount of waste that's being generated from a construction site. So I'm not sure when it'll start, because I don't know that a structure has been chosen yet for that build, but I definitely will be sharing the information once it's available.
Amazing.
One more thing I wanted to add from New York State. There's a bill that is a proposed amendment to the state building code to essentially allow reuse of lumber in structural applications. And the bill says, outlines a requirement for the Secretary of State to develop a program for grading reclaimed wood for structural purposes. So I think more information to come on that, but I'm gonna just add a link to that in the chat here.
That's fantastic.
It's super exciting.
And the last closing minutes, does anyone else have any comments, questions, concerns, cool news? If not, I'll give everyone a minute back. But I wanted to thank everyone for kind of showing up today. I know it's school vacation week in Massachusetts, but it's much appreciated. We'd love to have as much support as we can on some of the resources that were sent out earlier. If you have time, please look through the construction waste management specs. Hopefully we can use pay its resource and expand upon it. If you know of anything else, we'd love to kind of add as many resources and get that information out. And like I said earlier, we'll be sending out the slide deck with resources, hopefully early next week. With that, thank everyone, and we'll hopefully talk to you soon.
Thanks, Mike.